Я ухожу.
И в сортире их замочим, в конце концов.
Свобода лучше, чем не свобода.
Крым и Севастополь возвращаются в родную гавань.
Welcome to Infocom. In the new episode of Focus on Russia, our new guest is Yeghia Tashjian, who is a political scientist and an associate fellow at the Isam Forest Institute for Public Policy and International Affairs at the American University of Beirut. Yeghia, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Tigran, for the invitation.
I would like to discuss with you today the interaction between Turkey and Russia in the greater Middle East region. Could you please briefly present the current dynamics between Russia and Turkey in the Middle East, and has it changed since the outbreak of the Russo-Ukrainian war?
Thank you. Well, the modern Russian-Turkish relations in the region, especially in the Middle East, have been characterized as one of the, let's say, most complex relations in our region, because both countries have sought to maximize their interests either through cooperation or competition, where I call it sometimes co-opetition. So Syria actually falls within this context, where it is also unique and unlikely to be replicated elsewhere in the region due to structural constraints and also geopolitical situation in the Middle East. It's interesting that with the Russian intervention in Syria in 2015 and the downing of the Russian jet by Turkish missile, Moscow slapped Turkey with economic sanctions, and this was very painful for the Turkish economy. So I don't think that in the near future, at least, Turkey would take a similar step given the economic situation in Turkey. On the other hand, also Russia too, has significantly invested in the relations with Turkey given the war in Ukraine and the sanctions imposed by the West. So Moscow needs Turkey more than ever nowadays. So actually, it's also interesting that Russia's facilitation of Turkey's re-entry into the Syrian scene was also a win-win solution for both Turkey and Russia. From the Turkish perspective, Turkey moved forward and also minimized the Kurdish influence in northeast Syria. And from the Russian perspective, it was also important because, as we know, that the Kurds are the American allies. So indirectly, they have also, together with Turkey, minimized the American influence in Syria. Moreover, the Russian-led Astana peace process to find a political solution to the Syrian crisis alongside Tehran, Iran, and Turkey, which has replaced actually the Western-backed Geneva process, is very important to highlight here, because later we can try to link it to the process in SouthCaucasus, link it to Nagorno-Karabakh. So nowadays, today, there is a high-level meeting between the Iranian, Turkish, and the Russian presidents to discuss about the future and of Syria and whether, because as you know that there are reports that Turkey may escalate and go for another military intervention in Syria. So I think the coming weeks and the days will be very crucial to discuss the future of Syria and discuss the future of the Turkish and the Russian relations in Syria in the Middle East.
And a follow-up question. How can this interaction between Russia and Turkey in the Middle East impact the developments in the SouthCaucasus region in the coming months, probably, I don't know, weeks even?
Well, it's very interesting relationship because both countries actually, they divided their relations into compartments. That is, things that go wrong in one compartment should not adversely affect good relationships in other compartments where these relationships are successfully occurring. This model has been successful so far. The events, for example, in Nagorno-Karabakh have not or had limited effect on the developments in Libya and Syria, or even on trade relations between both countries. Thus, both sides have understood that compartmentalizing economic issues and geopolitical rivalries is necessary to avoid the negative spillover of certain disagreements into areas of bilateral cooperation. However, here there is also an important point that things may change in the future because Turkey, if it continues to provoking Russia in, let's say, areas traditional sphere of Russian influence, such as South Caucasus or Central Asia, this may also lead backfire from the Russian side. What we can realize is that despite the fact that both sides will be more interdependent on each other in the future, here, especially when it comes to energy security, also military, because as we know that the Russians, they sold the S-400 system to Turkey. So Turkey is becoming a bit dependent on Russia. But also Ankara is also cautious of this asymmetry and the unbalanced power structure. So this is why Ankara is trying to reduce its dependency on Moscow through energy projects. And hence, Moscow wants to maintain the political status quo in the region and prevent Ankara to take revisionist steps in the future. But everything, I think, is dependent on how Ankara is successful in being or in taking steps to become more less dependent on Russia. I think from here we can also may witness new geopolitical clashes, whether it will be in Libya, Syria, or even South Caucasus. Because as I have discussed, that I don't think that the developments in Syria and Libya will have a negative or positive effect in South Caucasus, but any clash when it comes to energy security or geopolitical, let's say, developments in the region may have a negative or positive impact in the future.
You have already mentioned the meetings taking place in Tehran. In this regard, I would like to ask, what is your take on the future of the 3+3 format? Will Ankara, Moscow, and maybe also Tehran be able to neutralize or to minimize the Western influence in our region through that format?
Well, if you had asked me this question a year ago, my answer would have been definitely yes. But the EU-backed bilateral and the trilateral meetings that happened between Armenian and Azerbaijani officials have shown that the EU is being active in the region, not only through trade and energy deals, as yesterday there was a gas agreement signed between Azerbaijan and EU, but also diplomatically and politically. Of course, the Europeans are very well aware that this is an area which is a traditional Russian influence sphere. However, some conservatives, maybe in the US or in the UK, would also try to push Russia, if not outside the region, at least weaken Russia's status or influence in the region. And hence, they would back additional, maybe Turkish role in the region to contain the Russian influence. Here, it is also important to mention that Georgia has not officially joined the 3+3 initiative due to its fear of increase of Russian influence at the expense of the West in the region. Moreover, starting October 2021, Iran under the new administration became much more proactive in the region, and we have witnessed diplomatic and economic interaction with South Caucasus. This was highlighted clearly with increase of the bilateral ties between Tehran and Yerevan, and the recent Iranian and the Azerbaijani deal that paved the way for a new trade route that would bypass Armenia. Hence, I would argue that Russia, Turkey, and Iran will do their best to minimize the Western influence, but not neutralize it, since the Russian-Turkish competition is directly linked to the Western-Russian clash. So the more there is a clash, and this clash is intensified in Eurasia, the more Russia has to work with regional partners such as Turkey and Iran to minimize or at least contain the Western influence, and in return, of course, to provide Turkey and Iran some additional space in the region.
And I would like to conclude our conversation with a question about the normalization process between Armenia and Turkey. As you probably know, there is a popular opinion in Armenia that normalization of relations with Turkey would significantly decrease Armenia's dependence on Russia and would weaken Moscow's position in the region. If this assumption is true, why does Russia support the normalization process?
Thank you. Coming from Moscow, I mean, just I'm talking publicly or analyzing the media, and also based on some of my meetings with Russian experts, I have realized that there are mixed signals coming from Moscow in this context. It was clear that Russia was pushing for normalization between Armenia and Turkey, as this will bring stability, according to them, in the region. From the Russian perspective, as long as Moscow is under control of the situation and the process of the ongoing negotiations between Turkey and Armenia, and at the same time, as long as the conflict of Nagorno-Karabakh is frozen, it will continue to have a leverage on Armenia's policy making. Hence, politically, I don't think that opening towards Turkey will have any negative impact on Russia's status, not just in Armenia, but also South Caucasus. Unless, let's take a very radical idea that unless if Armenian ruling elite take a disastrous path and in the future they raise the issue or question the legitimacy of the Russian military bases in Gyumri. This is out of the question, at least for now. But economically, Armenia would be less also dependent on Russia, and new markets will be opened to Turkey. Here I'm hinting for the European and the Middle Eastern markets. Thus, Armenia would have two markets, two routes. One via Iran and one also via Turkey. But also from the Armenian side, I think the Armenian government also should try to adopt some protective economic measures in order to prevent, let's say, this influx of the Turkish capital to the Armenian industry. But here it's also very important that if we go back to the events of 2008 and 2010, when during the Zurich protocols, one of the reasons that the Armenian-Turkish protocols failed was not the pressure from the diaspora. This is very simplistic if we try to analyze it. It was that it was bombarded from Moscow, because Moscow was, let's say, silently opposing this process. As we know that there was the Nabucco pipeline project and other things. So the Russians were not happy with the Zurich protocols, actually. So now things have changed. And Russia is looking to integrate Turkey in its regional project, and Armenia is at the intersection of this project. So as long as I said, that there is a clash between the West and Russia, Russia will use its best in order to create some troubles within NATO and the Western, let's say, alliance. And Turkey falls in this category, or in this project, the Russian Grand project. And this is why now, from the Russian perspective, it is their moment and it is at their advantage to win Turkey to their side.
Yeah, very well said. I absolutely agree with your points. I think they are really valid. Yeghia, thanks a lot for an interesting conversation.
Thank you, Dikran.